can tell you that I have no doubt that they are completely sincere in their belief that intelligent design is really good science, and success and validation of the scientific quality of intelligent design is just right around the corner. You know, the old joke that they make about cold fusion, that cold fusion is 30 years, cold fusion will be perfected 30 years from now and always will be. Well, it's sort of the same way with intelligent design. Intelligent design will be, will spring upon the scholarly world and take its place as a valid science very, very soon, and always will be.
Yes, I have to comment on this. I mean, I posted a video, how could creationism not be dishonest? Wherein I was challenged to, that I made a challenge for somebody to produce a creationist who did not lie in the promotion of creationism over evolution or other aspects of natural science. The example that someone brought forward was Behe, and challenged me that he did not lie, and I had to create a video showing where, yes, he did. He didn't just say things that were wrong. He said things that he knew were wrong and then said they were right, and I had to be able to show that we knew that he knew that they were wrong. It's tricky, but I did that. And I have to say that from my experience in dealing with whether they claim themselves to be proponents of intelligent design or just the regular label for creationism, they are willingly and knowingly dishonest.
Given my line of work and what I'm interested in doing, I don't care whether they're dishonest or just flat wrong. I don't want wrong stuff taught in the public schools. And, have fun. I mean, if you want to go ahead and fight these battles about did he know what he knew before he knew what he knew, fine, live it up. But I'm much more interested in concentrating on what's actually going on and what do teachers have to put up with.
Okay, well, we've got the second caller in. Jeffrey, are you with us?
How do you respond when people claim that evolution is atheistic? And do the ID proponents ever mention aliens as the designer?
Okay, let's take those one at a time. First one, I think you're asking how you counter the argument that evolution is effectively equates to atheism. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Sure. Evolution isn't atheistic. People are atheistic. Whether one is, people are atheists or they're not atheists, they're believers, but a discipline isn't. I mean, that's sort of like saying long division is atheistic. I mean, it's no more atheistic than it's Christian. The fact of the matter is, if you look at the religious belief of scientists, there have been fortunately recently, some fairly decent polls showing that the percentage of scientists who are theists, who believe in God or a higher power, is in fact a great deal lower than that of the general American public. It's about 30%. As opposed to more like 80% or 90%. That said, it's not zero. And that, I think, is something that's very important for people to realize. Atheism is an ideology. Fortunately, we have freedom of belief in the United States, so people are free to be atheists or not be atheists. But we know just empirically that scientists, people who are evolutionary biologists or evolutionary geologists or astronomers, may be people of faith and may not be people of faith. We know that that there is not any sort of one-to-one correlation between acceptance of evolution and one's particular ideology of or personal belief. So, the fact that a lot of scientists are believers it just puts the lie to the idea that evolution is an atheistic idea.
Okay, it's my turn. Well, I think one of the important points to mention here is that there are all kinds of people who do evolutionary biology of many different religious persuasions, and that's powerful evidence that evolution in itself is not inherently atheistic. If it were, you wouldn't have religious people devoting their lives to studying it. And a very nice piece of evidence that we have from Louisiana is that when we were arguing before the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education in December of last year that they should approve new biology books, whereas the creationists in Louisiana had attacked the selection process of those books, we had 2 Presbyterian clergy come in and testify on our behalf that those books should be adopted, and that the Bible, I like the way one of the clergy put it, the Bible transforms lives. It does not explain how the natural world works. It transforms lives. And so anybody that thinks that evolutionary biology or the theory of evolution is inherently atheistic should just look at the demographics of the people who study it. There are many different religious persuasions among the scientists themselves.
I think part of what we're getting into is a question about the nature of science, and I think a lot of people confuse the fact that science restricts itself to natural causes, which philosophers of science call methodological naturalism, with the idea of discipline. That said, I think there's an important distinction to be made about the value of science in informing one's personal individual philosophy. But science cannot compel any kind of conclusion about ultimate reality. I have Christian friends who believe that science and evolution specifically helps them make sense of their religious views and make sense of a universe in which there is purpose and meaning, etc. I myself am a non-believer, and I have many friends who are also non-believers who believe that science and evolution in particular helps us make sense of a world or a universe which we believe does not have some sort of ultimate purpose. I mean, in a way, you can look at science as this equal opportunity substratum for your individual philosophy. It can inform your philosophy. Hopefully it will inform it in a way that is logical and rational and concordant with your particular religious or non-religious views. But I don't believe that science can compel any particular conclusion about ultimate reality. And, that is not an uncommon view, I think, among philosophers of science.
Yeah, if I may, I've had this discussion obviously many, many times. The first foundational falsehood of creationism addresses this particular falsehood. As Barbara mentioned, there are many theistic evolutionists, and a theistic evolutionist is simply somebody who believes that natural things happen in a predestined way or by design. It may appear random, but there's a design behind it. I mean, it's not so hard for people to believe that when they've won the lottery, that it was an answer to a prayer, but a lottery is a deliberately random process. So why is it that evolution, which they criticize as being random, why could that not also have been guided by a God in the same way? And the next argument that comes up on this is, okay, you can find somebody that believes in God and in evolution, but you can't find somebody that believes in evolution and something other that all the evolutionists are atheists, or you can't find an atheist that doesn't believe in evolution. Well, in fact, I can. There's a Dr. Perianen Senapathy, who was one of the geneticists who was noted in the Human Genome Project. He wrote a book called The Independent Birth of Organisms, in which he ignores the same thing the creationists ignore, which is the ultimate proof against creationism in evolution, which is phylogeny, that systematic phylogeny. He says that all these different organisms came about by spontaneous generation, not just of the first living cells, or the first replicative organisms that could then branch out from common ancestry. He suggests instead that lobsters and horseshoe crabs and king crabs all arose independently by a happenstance falling together of atoms in a primordial soup that was relatively recent in occurrence. There are people like that. They're rare, but they make the statement. It is possible to be an atheist and not support evolution.
Well, yeah. In one sense, xenopathy is kind of the exception that proves the rule. He's so far out there in his misunderstandings of basic biology, one might argue, that his comments are really irrelevant to the general principle that you were holding to. I think that it is vanishingly unlikely that someone who is an atheist or a non-believer would reject evolution. There's certainly no doctrinal reason to reject evolution if you are not a theist. Just as a thought experiment here, I guess it would be possible for a non-believer to have some form of philosophical human exceptionalism and not want to see humans as tied to non-human beings. The non-theistic equivalent of I didn't come from any monkey. But the prospect is pretty small, I think. But yeah, that's quite a book that you were describing. His ideas are definitely out there.
Barbara, you want to come back for a minute?
Yeah, so I'd like to make one more point about the question concerning evolution and atheism. I think it's very important to recognize that religion is a highly personal matter. It's extremely personal. And people find all kinds of ways to make the adjustments they need to make in order so that religion remains meaningful in their lives. If you look at the history of religion, you'll see that it has itself an evolutionary history. Religion has adapted to the modern world simply in order so that it remains a meaningful option for people. And so there are many people who have found ways within the framework of their religious beliefs to accept modern science. Now, how they do it is their own business. It really doesn't matter to any of us. The thing that matters to us is that religious people do not try to have their views imposed on children in a public school classroom, and that they don't try to have them enacted as public policy. But it's a highly personal matter, and there are millions and millions of people who have found a way to make a reconciliation between their religious lives, their religious commitments, and modern science, and that's a fact. And how they do it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, I have one more thing I wanted to say. In the discussion that comes up, I often say that whether God exists or not, in terms of evaluating evolution, is irrelevant. I mean, if God exists, then God devised evolution. And if God does not exist, he didn't. But evolution remains factual in either sense.
I really like that. That's a great line. I will doubtless steal it from you at some point. I like that.
Thank you.
Okay, you had two points you wanted to raise, Javier. What was the second one?
The second was, do the ID proponents ever bring up like aliens or extraterrestrials as the designer?
Not if they can help it. There is a rather odd organization headquartered in Canada. Help me, Barbara. I've got a little brain freeze. What's the Thank you very much. Yes, that's what I was trying to think. It's so nice to have a brain auxiliary to my own here on this program. There's a group called the Raelians. They're the followers of a charismatic leader named Rael. That's not his real name. He just calls himself Rael. And the Raelians are they're not theists. They are not believers. They don't have a religion, but they have a kind of wacky view of how we came to the present place here on planet Earth, and they imagine that very superior, scientifically and intellectually superior agents from other planets have been tinkering with the world's organisms over time. It's sort of a progressive creationism, except more of like progressive intelligent design. And fiddling around with genes so that people would evolve and so forth and so on. And when the intelligent design people were promoted actively in the late 90s and early 2000s, a number of folks pointed out that, well, the aliens are actual allies of yours because they also believe in intelligent design, only they believe in a material intelligent design because, of course, the extraterrestrials are creatures of matter and energy rather than supernatural creatures. And, of course, the funny thing was that the intelligent design proponents at the Discovery Institute kept harping away at, now, well, we're not saying anything about the designer. It could be material, could be supernatural. We're just talking about detecting the evidence for design. I mean, that's really what intelligent design is all about. They're trying to do all of this hand-waving about how scientific they were. And so you'd think if that was really their goal, they would have seized upon the aliens as natural allies because, hey, here are the guys talking about detecting design, right? And boy, you could not have seen the dust cloud form faster. They just ran as quickly as they could away from the aliens. So yeah, you're right, Javi. The intelligent design people, you'd think, would seize upon the possibility of extraterrestrial design and creation, but somehow that didn't. I suspect it's because it doesn't appeal very strongly to their base, which of course is conservative Christians, for them to start talking about extraterrestrials. They're better off just trying to fool the rest of the public that what they're really talking about is not God. But of course, that's what the intelligent designer really is.
Now, didn't they also, at some point, somebody in the intelligent design tank actually came out and said that it would not be possible for the intelligent designer to be multiple entities or to not be a supernatural entity. Is that not correct?
Yes, we know exactly who the intelligent design people at the Discovery Institute think the designer is because they've come right out and said it. In 1992, William Dembski specified in a paper that he delivered that the designer had to be transcendent and supernatural. In 1996, Phil Johnson said that the defining concept of the intelligent design movement is that God is real, that he's the creator and that he's real. The other thing that we know is that intelligent design is rooted in the book of John. In the book of John, it's a sectarian Christian gospel. So we know that they're talking about the biblical God. And then in 2007, William Dembski, in an interview he did with Focus on the Family, he said ultimately the designer is the Christian God. So we know exactly who they think it is because they've told us.
And then they've also added to that by saying that it could not be anything other.
Well, Dembski specified that the designer must be a transcendent supernatural entity. Exactly. Right. He did that as early as 1992.
And then the whole purpose of it beyond that is to go out and try to find evidence that would fit your interpretation to imply that such a thing might actually be. So it, to me, sounds like an exercise in apologetics.
That's exactly what it is.
Well, yeah.
in fact, a very important item in my expert witness report for the trial was that religious apologetics is a very strong component of the wedge strategy as specified in the document that the Discovery Institute used to explain their strategy to their supporters. Religious apologetics is exactly what this is about. It's to inject religion into public policy so that they can, as they have said in their document, renew American culture. So yes, it's exactly religious apologetics.
I know my place. After you, Eugenie.
Hey, it's your show. I should let you talk. Sorry about it. But I just wanted to add a quick thought to Barbara's lovely summary there. You know, it's so funny to look at the relationship between the traditional young earth creationists of the Henry Morris Institute for Creation Research type and the intelligent design folks. The intelligent design folks, largely under the influence of Philip Johnson in the 1990s, tried to be a big tent for all anti-evolutionists. The intelligent design people, of course, had their particular message that they were trying to get out, and they very reasonably and I think quite wisely from a strategic standpoint, avoided comments about the Bible, avoided comments about Noah's flood, avoided comments about Adam and Eve, and they just sort of left the age of the earth. They left all of that young earth creationism stuff to the side and just hammered away at how terrible evolution was. And this seemed to work pretty well, except that the young earth creationists kind of lost confidence in the ability of intelligent design to really make the sale as an apologetic. And it's exactly like you were saying, Rob, that intelligent design is an apologetic, but it wasn't a good enough apologetic, because by leaving out all the kind of traditional Christian stuff, especially Jesus as Savior and so forth, intelligent design, they felt, really was failing to bring enough people to this particular religious persuasion. It was failing as an apologetic. So it's kind of interesting for we outsiders to take a look at the kind of carping that went on between the young earthers and the intelligent designers. And what was kind of interesting about this is William Dembski's efforts to try to spread some oil on this troubled water. Well, because he was trying very hard to, keep this alliance between the traditional creationists and the intelligent designers intact. And I think the kinds of comments that Barbara was talking about, where he just sort of flat out tried to drag intelligent design into a more traditional Christian apologetic, might have been an effort to try to shore up that particular base. But it's an interesting development to watch. I mean, I think one of the points that I like to try to make when I deal with science and religion in my talks in the general public is to point out that there is not a Christianity, that there's a tremendous variety of beliefs out there regarding evolution and just about everything else, including the divinity of Jesus. And even among the conservative Christians, in which certainly you would put the intelligent design folks and the traditional young earth creationists, even among the conservative Christians, you find a great deal of variation. We have evangelical Christians who are members of NCSE who fully accept evolution and who are really the missionaries to their fellow conservative Christians to try to help them understand that evolution really is good science. So we've got lots of different ideas out there within the Christian community, and not all of them obviously are in opposition to evolution or to having it be taught in schools, which gets us right back where we began.
The point that he raised was that is it not the case that intelligent designers consider that the intelligent designer created everything, including the universe? It's not just life. Is that right? That seems pretty much like a god.
Yes, that's right. If you read William Dembski's book, one of his books is called Intelligent Design, The Bridge Between Theology and Science. I think that's the subtitle. He says that actually what he's talking about in that book is pretty much a creation ex nihilo by a God who creates by fiat. He says God speaks and things happen. So that's pretty clear that God created everything just by speaking, a divine speech act.
You said a divine speech act? Is that what you said, Herb? Okay, so that's. Yeah. Would this be a good time to remind everybody that abracadabra is Aramaic for I created, I speak?
Well, I didn't know that, but it's pretty clear in Dembski's book that when God, it's like the investment company on television on the old commercial, when he speaks, things, people listen. Well, when God speaks, things happen. That's how Dembski explained it.